Automation. Automation is just when something is done by non-humans. Usually a human task becomes a non-human one. There you got machines making cars for us. And that happens in MT, in translation memory software, natural language generation, project management, and anything else you care to mention with language work these days. There's an element of automation in it. So that's what I'm talking about. Now, if I'm training translators, they all come into class these days in their first year, and they ask their first question, will there be a job for me? Why do they ask that? Because they can see, and I can see, that free online machine translation is good and used. So 143 billion words a day, that's only Google Translate, and that's in 2018, so it's going to be more now. I calculated, because in a previous study, I estimate that there's 333,000 full-time translators, equivalent of, and interpreters in the world. Be generous, give them 30,000 words a day. That means 1 billion. What do you get? That professional translators are translating 0.69% of what Google Translate renders. That is, of all the activity, the translating activity that's done in the world, your industry has just a very little bit of it, a very little bit. So if I'm a sociologist, I want to know what's happening with translation. I've got to look at the whole lot, not just at this particular sector. So has translation been automated? Will everybody lose their job? One model, a quick answer to this question is this. It's from Wei in China, where professional translators now will be doing machine-aided translation, and the rest sort of remains the same. Post-editing, we would assume. That's a possible future, but the picture looks more like this, I think. This is the huge amount of stuff that is being done now that wasn't done before. So that 99-something% of all the words being rendered doesn't mean words read, it just means words that go through the system, is serving tasks that were not done by professionals before. So we could calm down and say, well, you know what? It's going to remain the same there. And all those people out there who weren't employing professional translators before, they can enjoy all the machine translation they want. Good luck. They'll get better at using it, and the machine translation will get better, but it has no profound reason to affect the industry. Okay, that's a very superficial argument, but it is borne out by something it's Sarah Hickey said yesterday. Nimsy, you can show that the language industry has constant growth. And I can show just for looking at translators and interpreters, because these are the guys I train, that the outlook for them is healthy, 20% in the US, okay? Translated Canada, it's good, depending on where you are in Canada, of course, but near the big cities. And with Francophone Canada, you're fine. Slater, 2020, what do they say? 11.75%. Sounds pretty good, okay? So there's no real element of or indication that automation is destroying jobs or reducing the number of jobs. China is another world. They've got 11.1%, all right, which is actually pretty slow for them considering against 2019, but COVID is a different thing there. And what's interesting is all the other figures that I can find focus on turnover, focus on money, focus on profits. Very few of the industry reports actually count how many people are employed, but the claim here is in China that the employment has increased by nearly 40%, okay, over a decade. This 5.38 million translators really upsets the previous calculation I did on Google Translate, okay? Happily though, Google is not available in China in theory, so that is not there to perturb my calculations. The bottom line is that there's nothing to worry about. Automation is not destroying jobs. Or is it? Let me look at the question a little more closely. What do we mean by job loss? This is a study done by Besson, an economist, looking at the occupations in the United States, the list of occupations, jobs, that people had in 1950 and then in 2010. They're saying in this period, we have massive automation of manufacturing and service industries. How many jobs have disappeared? Only one. Do you know which one? Any guesses out there? Anybody? What job might have been around in 1950 and was no longer around in 2010? Oh, well, I've got a chat session here, haven't I? Bank teller. No, there are still bank tellers. I'm going to talk about bank tellers. Typists, well, they're typing on computers, hey? Anybody else? Thank you for the suggestions. The one was actually, what do you call it? An elevator operator, a lift operator, or elevator operator, okay? Which makes sense. You remember in these films, in the 30s and 40s, they go into an elevator and somebody there presses a button for them because they're buttons and it's too hard to figure out. You know, you press 2 and you get to the second floor. Actually, I discovered that there are some professional elevator assistants around in very fancy high-rise apartments in Beijing and Tokyo, where I am now. And there's a few oldies left around New York to give character to the place. Okay, so not entirely disappeared. However, Besson's point is that the effect of automation has not destroyed jobs and not destroyed occupations, which, you know, the activities that people do. And the logic he traces is this, and I think this is important for us. With automation, you get more productivity. Okay, that is, for the same effort put in, you get more things produced. That increases the demand for products because they are cheaper. That means there are more products, and so there's more work. The pie gets bigger. And that's certainly what's happened in the language industry. The volumes of words that are dealt with increase enormously and consistently. And here's the example of the banks. In this period, the banks brought in ATMs. What are they? Automatic teller machines, okay? And so people didn't go into the office of the bank to get their money. It all happened with the machines. So what happened was that the banks initially took the savings from that and invested in having more offices. There's less range of things for the bank staff to do, but we could have more of them because we had more offices, because proximity to the client was a big factor in attracting and retaining customers. Of course, that has now changed because people work with their banks online, and so the employment goes into the people who control all the security arrangements and of the online banking, fix it up when it goes wrong, or you have to phone them, you get the call centers, that's another source of employment. And and they get into really, really fancy financial products that nobody can really understand. So they find another way of generating income over there. So the occupations don't disappear, but their nature will change and shift. And I think that's what we can see happening in the language industries. There is a move to automation-resistant activities, or in other words, if automation works well on redundant, repetitive tasks, people will move to the less redundant tasks. There's somebody in the chat, a knocker-upper. Yes, a knocker-upper. But that was in the 19th century. The knocker-upper was before all the working class bought clocks. But okay, we're going to go back to clocks as well. Now, Sarah Hickey said yesterday that because there's a talent shortage in the industry has turned to automation. I was shocked. I thought, well, that's a beautiful excuse for using lots of machine translation, lots of post editing, okay, and automating project management and things. I don't know if that's actually what's happening. According to the economist's view, one would say that automation is pushing jobs into the more complex skills, and that creates a talent shortage because you need different skills. You need more complex, non-redundant skills. So I don't know which way you want to. Yeah, you can argue, oh, we haven't got personnel, therefore we use machines. No, the automation, the capacity to use machines will create the talent shortage, right? If you see my logic. And the kinds of jobs that the people are doing will change. And in any case, when you've got the routine skills, you outsource them to cheap countries where people don't earn very much. Call centers go to India, translating, post-editing can go to India, and the companies in China, in Beijing, I was fascinated to learn, are now outsourcing to Mongolia. All right, we'll keep going and going as long as there are countries to be called in and exploited. Now, what's happening in the translation industry, according to Sarah Hickey, was not just that, but also we grow because we're a people industry, okay? And because, what was it? When times are good, we do contracts, and times are bad, we do lawsuits. There is something to that. But surely it's more fundamental than that. As we get globalization, which means the movement of products and people across language boundaries, because we work on language still, the more movements we get, the more work there is. And globalization for high-income countries has been steady. We've got COVID there, but we've picked up from there, as you know. I hasten to point out, globalization is not a big deal for low-income or lower-middle-income countries. But the countries we're working in and for, yes, the driver I propose has not been the fact that we're so nice and friendly and competent. It's been globalization. The number of words gets bigger, the pie gets bigger, and our cut of it gets bigger, even if the cut is only 1%. All right, and that would explain the growth. So, nothing to worry about there. Wage dispersion, though, is a more interesting thing. Wage dispersion just means that some people get more money and the other people don't get so much. Now, this is a consequence of automation across the board, especially if the new skills are costly or difficult to acquire. So some people get the new skills and will get more money, and other people won't get the new skills and won't get as much money. Their income will not rise as much. They probably stay on the same level. And so lots of talk yesterday I heard about upskilling, getting new skills, doing it in your career, you constantly retrain. You can see that this would apply here. Now, this phenomenon is very, very powerful if you look at it on the level of a century. What's happened with automation since 2000, more or less, is that it is contributing to the disappearance of the middle class in post-industrial economies. That is, we're moving towards a world where you reap the benefits of automation, you get rich or stinking rich, or you don't move into that category, and you spend your whole life looking at how much money is in your bank account at the end of the month. And that bifurcation is incredibly worrying for our societies. And much of it, not all, but much of it can be attributed to the effects of automation. Now, is that happening in the language industries? I don't know. But as I go through the data, I find indications that are really worrying. So this was NIMSI 2019. They're drawing from the European Competition Index. So I did go back and I checked the numbers that were there. Big companies, this is the language industry, okay? Big companies, whoa, 86% growth over 7 years. That's fitting in with the 11% that Nimsy talks about in general. But look at the smaller companies, okay? Under 249, 16%, much less. But as you go down, what? It's negative. What's happening to all these guys? The self-employed guys and the mums and pops and the little guys who are having fun with language. Change over 7 years is negative? Please, what does this mean? I don't know. The Nimsy reports here, oh, you can do anything with statistics. But wait a minute. I'm starting to think, what is going on here? I look a bit more closely. European Language Industry Survey 2020. Now look at this text. I've done a cut and paste from the report. This isn't me. This is them talking to us, telling us what's going on. All right. Growth in the industry. The growth figures motivate both segments. And the two segments here are your companies and your professionals. All right. Both segments to maintain or increase their expectations. Whoa, we're upbeat. Net 71% for language companies and net 26% of independent language professionals. So everybody is positive, but the companies are, wait a minute, 3 times as positive as the language professionals. And then I look at the expectations of the companies, growing, that's what we would expect. Their real product output goes down and comes up, so it's still going up. But look at the independent professionals. Expectations actually go down, and their real turnover actually goes down. You take that out because we sprung back. The indications are that there are 2 industries there. One is doing very well from automation, the other not so well from automation. Go again and look at this. Same people, actually. I won't go through it in detail, but it's just the indication that there are these super agencies, the very big companies that bounced, boom, right back to the top, okay? And the others go down. So I don't think that Nimsy report, it might be overstated, but there is indication in these numbers that it's not the same story for everybody. And as much as the reports are very affirmative, very positive, like people in the industry, you guys all have to be upbeat and enthusiastic and and that's what's happening here. But if the people who wrote that report did a doctoral thesis with me, they would fail. Now, I mentioned that because this is from a doctoral thesis that was done with me. Defended about a month ago, actually, 2022. And it's looking at the translation language industry in Portugal. So I'll just take out some numbers from there, and it's based on size again, all right? So if we just take Europe of 28 countries in it, big companies have enjoyed growth. This is 11 to 18, okay? So we're out of COVID and we're out of the 2008. So there's no economic crises in this period. Percentage growth, 14.6 enterprise. That's a number of companies. I'm interested down here though, 217%, 217% growth, turnover, what? And I go down to the smaller companies, 23%. There are no big companies in Portugal, but the same thing. The bigger companies, they're not very big, but they're bigger, growth, the smaller companies, much less growth, okay? So the numbers are telling me that we're not all in the same boat. So that's the lovely Sarah yesterday from Nimsy. I listened to her talk. It was really great. She's good looking and happy and upbeat. And she talked about we all the time. We. Who are we? We apparently is the top 100 companies. And you can be very upbeat and map them. But if you look at the next 100 or the next 1,000, you would have to tell a different story, and you might be concerned about what automation has done to them. The theory is, and the theory is in these same reports, the bigger the company, the more they invest in technology, the more they invest in machine translation systems, the more they force their employees to do post-editing, or find other ways to do post-editing by outsourcing, etc. And the more they control their translators through sophisticated translation memory systems. On the other hand, these are my colleagues in Tarragona in Spain. They're looking at translators and interpreters in the United States, and they found that for the language pair with Spanish, that the quite complex, non-redundant skills that these people do have, in the courts in particular, are undervalued and even penalized. Why? The idea is that everybody speaks Spanish, so why should we pay you well for speaking Spanish? You got that just by being born, didn't you? All right. But what they find there is, of course, this bifurcation in the industry as well. There are very highly paid translators and interpreters in the United States, but also a lot of very, very low paid. So the industry is not just one. Now, what happens, according to the theory of wage dispersion, is this. The increased supply of routine tasks done by machines drives up the wages and employment of non-routine jobs. So if you're associated with the industry that's using automation and you're in there doing something that has to do with the automated product, your wages will go up, all right? And this explains why, and this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the US, that even though translators and interpreters are among the occupations at high risk of automation for obvious reasons, and even more so since 2016 with neural machine translation, even despite that, the outlook for them is to grow significantly faster than the average employment growth. Why is that? Because they are associated with a sector that has brought in automation and thereby created jobs that are secondary to it, that are non-routine and demand complex cognitive skills. Okay, so, you know, I'm getting to what you all know. You just have to be smart. You have to work with automation and do those complex, high-order cognitive skills. Now, it's interesting when you look at the sociology, more than just the economics of automation, that there is always resistance. There's resistance to new technologies across the board. The theory of this is that people enter an industry with the technologies that are available and use those technologies to climb to the top. New people come into the industry with new technologies, but the people at the top don't want the new people to use different technologies. They'll overtake them. So often we find among translation teachers, translation scholars, even a lot of the research being done now on post-editing, we find 1,000 reasons why it's vastly inferior to fully human translation. And there are research projects that are showing significant differences that one would have to worry about. And, you know, we could learn from that to improve post-editing. But a lot of it is generation-based resistance. Now, what's intriguing in this is a survey of the challenges facing translators, okay? And you can look down here and find technology is the number 3 thing that worries people, along with visibility and time, okay? But technology worries the trainers. The students, hey, you know what? Technology is no problem. We can handle that. They're young. They were born with this stuff. No, they were born. They've been using it for years, okay? So what's difficult for the older people managing the training situation is not difficult for the younger people. So often these problems, I think, are exaggerated on a generational basis. Nunes Vieira did a study of professional translators' opinions on machine translation, and that means post-editing here. And he found that they were broadly very, very positive. You know, in the industry, people working in the industry, there is not a lot of actual resistance to the machine translation technology itself. It's seen as an aid in many respects, but there was a lot of resistance to the business practices that surround its use. And this is particularly important. There is, or detected in this study and studies like it, the feeling that the technology is removing the translator from, firstly, control over the process. You do your work and it disappears automatically, goes to the company and they do what they want with it. And two, we can't see who the end client is, who the end reader is, what kind of language is going to be useful for that. So it's incredibly alienating if used in the way that the big companies are using the technology. So the key thing here is not the technology itself, but how you use it. This goes back to Lewis Mumford's claim that all technology is good or bad, depending on how you use it and who uses it. I'm interested here in the watch, okay? If you go back to the early studies of automation and technology, the industrial workers were brought in from the fields and had to work in factories. And so time became the measure of their productivity. You had sun time, and then you had clock time. And so as soon as they're in the mills, working for the industrial capitalist, and they get a bit of money, what's one of the first things they buy? A clock, a watch, in fact, a watch. They appropriate time and make it for themselves. And one of the criticisms, I think it goes back to Karl Marx, was, they're instruments of their own enslavement. We could say to all these translators, you idiots, why are you using this technology? Why are you using the translation memory systems? It's your own alienation from communication that's happening there. But I do like the reply of E.P. Thompson here. They're saying that no, the factory workers got the watches so they could control the time and check what the boss was doing with that time. That is, they appropriated the technology for themselves to empower themselves in the face of the other people who had originally brought in the technology in order to gain more absolute power. So just the fact of having a watch, or the fact of being a translator and working with the technologies can be an empowering move to protect oneself. We had to talk about power, okay? So I put that one in there. Now, there is evidence in some of the reports that the bigger the company, the more they invest in CAT technology, and machine translation being a very strong one, and much less in the smaller companies, okay? So it is happening now. I know that a lot of anybody who's translating has to look at post-editing, editing, and work with it. This is a mode of production. I think it would be an overstatement to say that people can actually use that technology against the big companies who are making a lot of money out of it. But you've got to use it. You've got to know what it is. Specialization. This is, I think, my final point. Okay. How is automation affecting specialization in the language industries? Now, this is Karl Marx. He was fascinated by watches. He calculated that it took 72 different occupations to make a watch, which is quite worrying. So he looked at the production system and saw that the division of tasks was separating workers from each other, and it put them in a position where no particular worker could see the end product or control its quality. And so the project manager was in charge of everything. And this, of course, leads to a fragmentation of bargaining power. But I think more important for us, a loss of pride in the product. So when language automation separates tasks and creates specialists not in a particular field, I don't know, like medicine or law or whatever, but specialists in a particular technology or part of the work process, we are fragmenting the field and dividing up the people who could request a bigger part of the deal. But also we are removing people from pride in the end product. Sorry, I've got a chat session person here. Time of standard. I'm very interested, Aggie, in the schedules and the shipping schedules as well, because it brought in the time zones that we have now. But prior to that, you didn't have time zones. But yeah, sure. Every area had its own time zone, and then the time zones were nationalized. Yeah, but that's another story. Okay. Now, I've been arguing that machine translation, in particular, as the stellar showcase, a part of automation, doesn't destroy jobs, but it changes their nature. Now, you can see it when you just look around at what the names that are being used for what translators do. They're people trained as translators. They have certain language skills. They may or may not have high technological skills, but certainly we move into post-editing where, and this is one of my points that I want to insist on, where what we sell, what the translator sells there is not an amount of work. The translator can sell the trustworthiness, can authorize the translation as being valid as a text, like a notary does. Put a stamp of approval on it. A notary doesn't spend a long time, it doesn't get paid by the number of words. The notary gets paid for the trustworthiness and the stamp of appeal of authority that goes on the text. I would like post-editing professionally to head in that direction. Is it going there? I doubt very much. Technical writing is another field that's opened up by automation processes. That's writing for machine translation, pre-editing. Revision and reviewing, incredibly important. Project management, terminology, database management. All these things, including rewriting down the bottom, are created around machine translation. And this is the kind of specialization that I think people can move into and are doing it. So when you're talking about a talent crisis, a shortage of talent, often you're talking about people moving into the things down the bottom here, or public relations, which I should have mentioned in that list as well. And we get these hybrid jobs now: journalation, trans-editing, transcreation, transadaptation, translation and promotional work I can't find, and translation and public relations. They haven't invented neologisms yet. I'm sure that will not be long in coming. But we are getting this view where translation is not just one thing, and that it can feed into many, many, many kinds of text production, some with automation, most without significant automation. That is, you move into the more complex, less redundant kinds of cross-language work, accessibility management. This is came out, Esteban, 2018, when she found about 600 unique titles, 600 being used for things translators can do. I'll just mention a few with the word solution. Some of you might be a solutions architect or cloud solutions architect or any of those. And then quite obviously, what's happening in the industry is that with mergers and buyouts, it gets bigger and bigger. And as was pointed out yesterday, the role of translation is slotted alongside all these other kinds of language services, some of them crossing language boundaries, others not. But they are inviting people in these industries to move, to jump, not quite jump ship, but take their skills and go into the non-redundant skills that are required on all these levels. All happy faces, all female happy faces, which is interesting if you look at the publicity. And we've got translation and localization, right? But also media production, creative product testing, data training, and the technology is all down this side now with SDL going into RWS. All right. I'm near the end, actually, so we've got time to have some discussions. I'd go back to hardcore Marxism, but this is a bit of Marxism. It's worth worrying about. Payment by the hour. What does it mean? What did it mean when they went into the factory and got paid by the hour? This is early Marx, okay? Marx in Paris. We should not say that Proudhon, it's on Proudhon. We should not say that one person's hour is worth another person's hour. That's just what happens when we pay people by the hour, I assume. But rather that one person during an hour is worth just as much as another person during an hour. That is seeing the person and not the hour. So Marx argues that the capitalist mode of production of his day saw time as everything. People are nothing. They are at most the carcass of time, and that carcass of time is the phrase. Quality no longer matters. And this was his concern about people not being able to see the final quality of that beautiful watch that they had built, but also working in the factory and just not having any relation to the end product at all. Quality doesn't matter. Now, does quality matter in the industry? I'm sure you will all say yes, because we are highly qualified, highly trained professionals who produce high quality products, of course. But quite famously, Renato Bernardino, some years ago now, did get up, 2007, was it? Dear me, it's a long time ago. He got up and said, you know what, guys, don't sell your products on the basis of quality, because your clients will never know what quality is, because they don't know the languages back there, and they can't appreciate the complexity of what you're doing anyway. Sell your product on the basis of something else, like timeliness or the quality of your public relations. But don't try to sell anybody a product on the basis of quality. Quite worrying if you put it next to Marx's warning about the carcass of time. Okay, does quality matter? On the job titles, I do a lot of revision of legal academic stuff. I think it poor ELF. I often feel more of a linguistic cleaner and decorator than a reviser. Anna, I'm with you. You know what I do? I supervise doctoral theses. Do you know what I do with most of my time? Correct bad English. All right, still, okay. It happens, and we do it. All right. But I still enjoy doing the research as well. Okay. What's to be done? A Leninist question for anybody who can remember Lenin. I think, and I don't know, because you guys know, you're in it, you're doing trial and error, you will find the answers that academics like me are not paid to find. We're just looking back on the history and the theories and trying to connect things together. But I would hope that the message is for language companies, hey guys, be nice. Value people's non-routine skills and pay them well. Why not? If you want to retain talent, you pay the talent, okay? That's interesting, something like that. Sell human qualities, as Renato said, timeliness, trustworthiness, complexity management. Note that trust, in Luhmann's term, is a mechanism for reducing complexity. If you can get trusted, you are handling a very complex process and the client is paying you because you hide that complexity, simplify it, reduce it for them. And you develop what are called the nurturing virtues. As was said yesterday, localization is a people-first industry. You know what? It's not. It's a technology-first industry. That's where the big money is coming from. And the people-first bit is moving to the public relations side of business, which is necessary. But to say it's a people-first industry is to hide over, I think, the hardcore reality of what's happening. I wonder what's down here. And invest in automation. Speak softly, carry a big stick.